Barth, is this like Christmas morning for you? When it comes to the Patriots and preseason game number 1? Just get you hot and bothered?
So it's funny. I feel like I get asked like 5 or 6 times a year at this station if it feels like Christmas for me. There's
the draft,
the start of training camp, the start of preseason, the start of the regular season, the start of the college football playoff. Like, as far as those go, look, it's fun. We get to go watch a football game tonight. I know some people say it's not a real football game. It's better than nothing. As far as Christmases go, like I'll take the start of camp. I don't know if I'll take the start of camp over this. I'll take the start of the regular season over this. I'll take the draft over this. I'll definitely take the start of the college football playoff over this. It's low on the Christmas list, but like, yeah, I mean, we're one step closer to real football. We've all been here watching a preseason game, especially the first preseason game. Oh boy, I get to watch my favorite team play football today. This is great. It's going to be like football season again. And then you watch 5 minutes of the game and you're like, all right, like it's not football season yet. So it's fun. The joint practices have taken a little bit away from what these games ultimately are, certainly. But we're still watching football, and I'm not going to complain about that.
I put preseason game number 1 in a bucket with the dunk contest and the home run derby, where I feel like it's just long enough by the time it actually gets to the point of preseason game number 1, I forget what a bad product it actually is. So I get excited about it. And then, like you said, 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, that's right. Same thing with the dunk contest. By the time that thing comes around, I'm all jacked up for it. And 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, that's right. This is not actually a good product for sure. Now, you've been at camp every single practice so far. So I'm interested to get your expectations for this team coming into the year now and whether or not you've adjusted those expectations based on the practices that you've seen so far. Colin Cowherd on the other day talking about expectations for the Patriots. Take a listen to this, Barth.
I looked over my predictions that I made a few months ago. Josh Allen's going to win the division for as long as he's in his prime. The Patriots are the safest double-your-win total bet in the league in 5 years. I wouldn't change a thing. AFC North prediction, Ravens are the class of this division. I think because of all the noise around the Bengals, all because of ownership, I'd probably move the Bengals out. Steelers-Browns just not good enough. AFC South is weak. Texans are going to win the division. In the AFC West, if I move Cincinnati out, because I've predicted they'll make the playoffs, I would put the Broncos in, I'd get the Bengals out, and I'd move Sean Payton in.
Do you agree with them? Patriots doubling their win total here potentially?
I think it's in play. I definitely think it's in play. Now, part of that is they just won so few games last year, right? Usually when you talk about doubling win total, you're getting into double digits and things like that, and that's not the case here. But when you look at the moves they made this offseason, and their weak schedule's absolutely a part of it.
Has to be. I think you have to factor that in.
I don't know that I'd be as confident if they were playing. I was talking to Stenberg before the show. Obviously not going to play a first-place schedule, but like looking at the Eagles' schedule and some of the teams they got to play, they got to face, I think they're playing the AFC West, right? So that's a factor too, but I think it's realistic. And the thing for me, when we were doing those win projections when the schedule came out, so I had them at 9 games they should win. Doesn't mean they will win, but 9 games they should win. And I'm driving home, and I remember thinking, like, what am I doing? 9 games for a team that won 4 last year. Like, what am I thinking? And there's 2 things that I guess I'm assuming that lead to that. Number one, you're assuming Drake May takes a year 2 leap. And so far in these practices, he's looked like he's on that track.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. When it comes to some of these like projections that you have so far, has anything in camp that you've watched led you to believe that that's not going to take place? And Drake May is probably top of the list, right? We all expect that year 2 jump. Based on what you've seen at practice, you expect that to actually take place.
So one of those things, again, was predicated on Drake May getting better. And so far in camp, he's looked better. I think especially that practice on Wednesday, the thing that stood out to me, he elevated the offense. It wasn't a perfect day for the offense. It probably could have looked worse if Drake May. It probably could have looked worse if Drake May didn't do some of the stuff that he did, but he did it, and he deserves credit for that. The other thing, I go back to Mike Vrabel's introductory press conference when he was asked about the pillars of his program, and he said a good place to start is we're not good enough to take advantage of bad football. Right? The Patriots have been one of the worst teams at creating turnovers. They have one of the lowest rates in the last 2 years scoring points after getting the ball off a turnover. Their penalty margin isn't good. Like anything that you would consider taking advantage of bad football and not shooting yourself in the foot. I think they're going to be better at that. That's something, and I have my game preview up on 98.5thesportshub.com. Matt Dolph has one as well. But one of the things I'm looking for tonight, and this is harder to judge in practice. You can kind of judge it, but you got to see it in a game. Just the operation of it. Are they getting in and out of the huddle? Are they lining up correctly? Are they avoiding stupid penalties? Are they not burning pointless timeouts? We saw a lot of that last preseason. And I think a lot of people chalked it up to, that's preseason, they're, working stuff out.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, that probably should have been a bigger red flag than some people, including myself, treated it.
Oh, you think that carried over during the regular season? Yeah.
Remember that Commander? It was the Commanders last year. Was it Chooks Okorafor or Darian Lowe jumped off sides 4 plays in a row? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember it. I want to say...
I think it was Okorafor.
I think it was too.
So, dude, wouldn't you know it, that kind of ended up being a little precursor to what we saw before Chooks ultimately left the team.
13 snaps later, he's out the door,
But and I'm expecting that to be a lot better. This is a veteran coaching staff. This is a staff that's preached the details. I think it's been a camp that's focused very heavily on the details. I don't know that it's going to be a perfect operation in the first preseason game, but minor little things, fine. It shouldn't be, again, 4 penalties on 4 plays because you can't line up correctly, or calling a timeout because guys don't know who's supposed to be in the huddle or not. Like, I think that it sounds dumb. That can go a long way, especially against a weak schedule, and we'll get our first look at their real operation tonight.
I think we kind of got it, though, honestly, in that joint practice. We had Mike Reese on after practice to kind of give us sort of a recap of what he saw down there. And leading into that, I went back and I dug through what a lot of people, including yourself, Barth, wrote about the joint practice post the Eagles. And again, that should have been a monster red flag in terms of what the operation was going to look like during the regular season. There were more sacks than completions during that practice. I think you had them at like 9 penalties throughout that thing because obviously they had the refs, the joint practice for the Eagles. And I walked away from that joint practice with Washington saying that I think that the comparisons for the year before and the Gerard Mayo era Patriots, or that team at least, should kind of be put to the side. And I think you need to start to compare the operation that the Patriots are going to have to other organizations that have sort of rebooted here. So I personally would look more towards, well, what's Washington look like, right? Versus what Washington looked like last year versus what the Patriots looked like. Because I think you've turned the page, and it was so bad last year. Again, I always say it. You went the wrong direction in overtime, right? You picked the wrong direction with the win in Tennessee. Like, not ideal. Not ideal in terms of the game day operation. And so when I just look at, I think the expectation and the bar should be a lot higher for this year's team based on the head coach, based on the offensive coordinator, based on some of the other coaches that are on this coaching staff and the expectations in year 2 of Drake May. So that operation should be buttoned up, and I think you should be kind of comparing it to something else other than last year's Patriots team.
Yeah, the bar should be higher than that. Absolutely. But it's still something. Again, my expectations are high in this regard, but it is a first-time coaching staff, new building, new setting, all of that. Like, I think that is kind of what the first preseason game is about. It's just about, all right, this is where we want everybody to stand on the sideline, like know where you're going, when you need to come in the game, check out. Do you know what packages you're in? Do you know what formations you're in? Are you not committing penalties? Things like that. We hear it all the time in camp, like a quarterback throws an interception right, and people will say, hey, that it's a training camp interception. He's trying something. He threw the pick, but you'd rather throw it in that setting than in the game. That doesn't really exist with the operational stuff. You're not taking experimental penalties. So that's something that I just think tonight is a really good opportunity to judge.
All right, 617-779-0985. Like you mentioned, Barth, you have up on your key takeaways for today. Do we have a snappy name for this, by the way? Is it like Barth's Bites? What are we going with
So
here?
I do, during the regular season last year, I started doing a thing on Fridays called 5 Things, which is just 5 thoughts about the game in general. So I'm making it 5 things for the preseason.
Right, we can come up with a better title than 5 Things, Barth. Come on.
I kind of like the bites thing. We add a little crunch sound to it.
Yeah, maybe we workshop with that coming up next, Barth. We'll get your thoughts on what you're looking for coming up tonight. Washington versus the Patriots. The storylines to watch for this game, and one of them you have is all of the tackles.
All of the tackles, not just Will Campbell. Like I've been trying to stress this a lot because I think it's the most under-talked about part of this team right now. Yes, Will Campbell, 4th overall pick, massive investment. That picture always jump scares me. I gotta get Fowler a new picture. Will Campbell, tremendous investment, very important player for this team. All of that. And we're seeing him up against NFL competition, and it's important. It's a good measuring stick. I thought he had a good practice on Wednesday. Does he build on that? They also have a 34-year-old right tackle who's been limited throughout practice. And, I know some people are saying, well, what if Campbell has to move to guard? Even if he's good at tackle, both tackles playing 17 games in the NFL is rare. It's a physical position. Guys get hurt. The depth there has not been good this camp. Marcus Bryant, the 7th-round pick rookie, has started to come along a little bit. That's as much as you have. DeMontre Jacobs, last year's starter, has not had at right tackle, has not had
Zoe's
a good
favorite
camp.
player, yeah.
Vidarian Lowe was on PUP for most of camp. He's still very limited. They have Jack Connolly, who's a UDFA from BC, who hasn't gotten a ton of run. And that's kind of it. Caden Wallace is playing guard now. So hopefully you don't need to use your tackle depth a ton, but we know how this thing goes, right? And so I couldn't tell you right now who the backup left tackle is. I don't know. It's probably Bryant, but he's also the backup right tackle. And if Morgan Moses is going to be in and out, what does that mean? I think that there's definitely jobs to be won. You're not just looking at does Will Campbell belong? Who's going to be backing him up? Because that's important too.
Does Will Campbell belong would be my next question to you. What have you made of his camp so far?
Looked like it so far. Yeah, he had that one rough day, which was really a rough period. It was a rough period, don't get me wrong. Like Caleb Von Chase on handing him his lunch. But outside of that, he hasn't looked out of place. There's, the growing pains that come with being a rookie, but he's held his own. The big thing to me where he's improved the most, when he was getting beat early in camp, he was getting beat. He would lose the rep early, and the guy was by him, and this is in pass pro. And that was it. Like, it was done. He was to the quarterback. Now, what he's been a lot better at is even if he gets beat on the initial half step or whatever, right? First half step. Dietrich Wise, he had this with Dietrich Wise on Wednesday. He has a better ability now to recover and either lessen the extent to which he's gotten beat to buy his quarterback time or even come back and win the rep. So, for instance, Wise tried that outside in move on him, got that first half step. Campbell adjusted and was able to get him on the ground and ultimately win the rep. So that's part of what makes some great offensive linemen really great. You're not going to play 65 snaps in a game and never get beat. But if somebody does get the initial step on you, can you still come back and win the rep? And I think he's grown there pretty significantly for what is a short period of time. I think he's grown there pretty significantly over these first couple of weeks.
Barth's Bites. Next up, does Efton Chisholm take the next step?
Yeah, so Efton Chisholm obviously had a great spring, and he continues to be solid this summer. He's getting open. He's catching the football. He did have the drop in the in-stadium, but that was kind of the only one. It feels like he's doing everything as much as he can do with the opportunities he's been given. And usually you see that guy start to move up and get some more reps with the first unit so he can really make a roster push. And that just hasn't happened yet. Maybe there's something else going on that we're not seeing. I don't know. But seems to me like the kind of guy that would get some more rep with the ones, especially now, Kendrick Bourne's hurt and Matt Collins is still easing his way back in. And maybe there are some snaps there. I know it's a crowded room. So if he's going to make that leap, like the only thing he hasn't done yet is perform in a game.
Right.
And that's a chance tonight. And I think he'll probably play a lot tonight. That's just me guessing, but I think he'll play a lot tonight. So if he is really going to make this roster push, and to do that, he's going to have to get reps with Drake May against the starting defense. He's got to do whatever he needs to do to get up to those first team reps. Feels like a good performance in the game might do that.
It's interesting you brought that up. Obviously, what we can watch down there is limited based on where we are. But when Josh Dobbs came in, when they first got things started with Washington, the security blanket there was Chisholm. Made a couple nice plays early on there, and you're like, you know what? This kid is getting open, doing everything you want. How much of this is the Pop Douglas thing and the fact that they have some options when it comes to, and it's crazy to say that because we always talk about how limited they are at receiver, but it feels like when it comes to somebody playing inside there is some depth.
Well, it's funny. We've done this the last few years where we talk up the Patriots wide receiver room being competitive and then it's ultimately not great. Those are two different things. A room being competitive just means all the guys are about the same skill level, right?
So it could be competitive, just not good. Yeah.
So when we had, Christian Wilkinson competing with, I don't remember if all these guys were on the team at the same time, but like N'Keal Harry and Tyquan Thornton, it's competitive. It's competitive, right?
Yeah,
so now look, I think ultimately, I said this on a podcast yesterday. I don't know that the ceiling of this wide receiver room is astronomical unless Diggs really turns back the clock. I think the floor has been raised significantly from what it was the last couple of years. It just feels a lot more professional, a lot more buttoned up. So I do think this is not the same as the last few years. There is that competitiveness you're talking about. I don't think Chisholm's redundant with Pop Douglas. I've seen a lot of people say that, and they might line up in the same position, but Chisholm is short area quickness, physical receiver, chain mover. He doesn't have that straight line speed. Pop Douglas is more of a vertical player who can play horizontal but can also play more vertical. To me, it's sort of like Edelman, and everybody wants to compare Pop to Edelman.
Yeah.
And I get why.
Yep.
Pop to me is more of like a Danny Amendola, almost Chris Hogan type. Now, Hogan was bigger, but a guy that, yes, lined up in the slot, but had more street speed to stretch the field vertically, was, a great threat. Not that Edelman wasn't a threat after the catch, but I think Edelman was better maybe before the catch than after. I think Pop is better after the catch than before. If Chisholm's redundant with anybody to me, and I don't think this guy's making the team, so maybe it doesn't matter. If Chisholm's redundant to anybody with me, it's Jalen Polk. He's a power slot.
All right, hold that, because we'll get into some Jalen Polk stuff a little bit later. But when it comes to the wide receiver room and what you're talking about with Pop Douglas, maybe it's different, but do you think that the production, if Drake May takes that jump, if this offense under Josh McDaniels looks the way that I think a lot of fans are hoping it's going to look like, is the production there going to be for Pop Douglas? Is it going to take that next leap?
So maybe I don't know if he's going to ultimately be the volume guy, though.
Okay.
Because he's had some problem with injuries. He's a smaller guy. To me, if somebody on this team is going to catch 100 balls, it's Diggs. If Diggs stays healthy, I think he's more of a chain mover at this point in his career. I think him in that Z option role is where he's going to thrive. I think with Pop Douglas, things I'm looking for statistically, right, where I think he could really improve and be impressive. Yards per catch, yards after the catch, percentage of catches for first downs. Like, I think he's more, if they're going to run the ball well and you're going to be hitting Diggs for 8, 10, 12 yards at a time and you're getting a team to creep that safety up, now here comes Pop Douglas either running up the seam behind him or you're going to run him on a drag past that safety and make that safety catch him in a foot race. I don't know that he's the guy you're feeding the ball 12 times a game. It's nothing against it. I still think he's a really good player. I've always been high on Pop. I think there's more to his game than what we've seen through the first couple years of his NFL career. I just think stylistically, he's more of a big play threat than a volume guy.
617-779-0985. We'll get some more Barth Bites here coming up in just a second. But first, let's sneak in a couple phone calls. John's in Franklin. What's up, John?
Hey, guys. Happy Friday. So listen, I think the expectations for this team are a little insane. Don't get me wrong. I am so excited Vrabel's at the helm. I can't tell you how much I believe in that guy as a coach. And I hear people talking about like 10 or 11 wins, and I really think it's very naive and crazy. I expect, and I'd be happy with 7 to 8 wins. And let me explain that real quick. I want to see an upward trajectory of this team with the talent, especially, guys that they've drafted. I want to know we have players going forward. But more than that, and more than anything, I want to see at the end of the year, basically the rest of the NFL being like, whoa, we got to watch out for these guys next year. And I'll give you a very quick example of that. You look at Denver last year, right? At the end of the year, a lot of people were like, whoa, Bo Nix is not that bad of a player. He's pretty good. He's developing, and look out for Denver next year. And that's kind of how I feel about them this year and how I want to see, kind of the Patriots develop this year. And, I just want to see basically, if you look at last year, they had such hot garbage at talent, and obviously the coaching was just completely inept. So I just want to see May, develop obviously more. And more than anything, I want to see him stay healthy and not take stupid hits to his head. And I want to see that we can count on him going forward. Thank you, guys.
A lot of good points in there. I think the expectations are tied to what you think of Drake May. If you're somebody who believes in Drake May, like Drake May with this team around him, 9, 10 wins is not unrealistic if you're a believer in him. If you're somebody who thinks that some of the red flags last year maybe were more on him than the coaching staff, then that number's a little high. I get asked a lot, what's a successful season for the Patriots, right? Playoffs, 10 wins, blah, 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 whatever. I have, and this is maybe oversimplifying, but I have 3 major check boxes I'd like to see from them this year.